So for Jenkins CI/CD pipelines, we have already covered how to write a simple pipeline script, which is called a freestyle pipeline, and uh, we also wrote some shell scripts which we used for that freestyle pipeline for going through various steps, and we created a Docker image in the end and ran it multiple number of times. And we also saw that whenever any change in code is there and we trigger that pipeline again, that change is visible on the website. That means all the steps are going through. But this is not a complete picture. There are lots of other steps which can be included in the pipeline. One of them is adding test cases, and other is adding alerts, which we had discussed earlier. Like in a DevOps pipeline, you get alerts of failures and success all the time, so you can act immediately. So those steps we will be adding gradually. But before that, we have to learn there are lots of styles in which pipelines can be written. So one is the freestyle, where you get a form which you fill up with different information like where the repo is, what is the credential of the repo, and then you get a box where you can add the shell script commands, or you can add how to launch your shell script, and then you deploy it. So if you get any errors on the console, you fix those errors and then try again, and that way your pipeline script is ready and you can use it and reuse it again and again for different projects. But there are slight differences when different languages are used for programming. So we will do examples of almost all these types which are around. Like for example, we did a HTML example last time. We will also do some of it today, but we will also try a Java example, so that whenever you come across a project written in Java, you will find it a good reference. Then there is a Python project which we will try, so that you know how Python is containerized and made to deploy in CI/CD mode. And we will also try to do one Android project. So these things we will do today and in the next session. So what we are going to do first is we'll try things like parameterized pipelines. I'll tell you what these things are when we go on. Scripted and declarative pipelines. So three types we will try. There are more to it, but we'll break it down and move it to the next session. There is a multi-branch pipeline as well, and there are more examples of declarative pipelines which we will be covering. Why I'm emphasizing on pipelines, because this is going to be one of the crucial part of your DevOps journey. Apart from automation and scripting, this is a very important, I mean, this is even more important if real DevOps is practiced. So, and it also looks good on your profile that you know pipelines and Jenkins in depth, because that is the core thing from where core dashboard, you can say, from where DevOps pipeline is launched and all the practices are followed. So let's get started with that. This one is the same diagram. Let's not again reiterate it. It's the same flow from various steps which goes into production. We were already done with this and this one. So we will be concentrating on the types of pipeline which we are going to cover today. So first, and for you people, just, I mean, go whatever I'm demonstrating, go through it. Even if you don't understand certain parts, you can revisit the video and see it. But I mean, this takes a while to sink in. So don't worry if you don't understand everything. You might be thinking certain parts of the shell script, why did he write like this, or what was the reason of it. You might not understand all of it, but yes, those questions will come slowly when you start understanding more and more on this topic. So then you can ask anytime and I'll be there to answer questions. But for now, you know, the pipelines are many types, and there are certain cases in which you use. So we will discuss those cases, like which pipeline type to use in what case. So that will be discussed only once you complete all. Then only you know that what are the different types and what were the differences. Then you can ask a question like, so what is the best scenario to use this, and why are there so many types, why not a single type? Because the freestyle pipeline does almost everything, you can manage anything on that one as well. But then why we are using these kind of pipelines and what are the use cases? So once we complete all the types, then we get into the question answers on why we are doing this. That will come in the next session actually, because you still have some more pipelines to cover in the next session. Then it will complete your Jenkins pipelines topics, and then we can move on to automation and so on. All right, so freestyle pipeline using HTML, we had done this last time. So we'll try to do the same thing with the Java project. So that will be our first task today. And then we will try scripted pipeline and a declarative pipeline example, which has some code in Python. Very simple code, because the code in the end doesn't matter, because that will be taken care by the development team. We only want to know what should be the style of deployment when a code is Python, or what should be the style of deployment when a code is HTML, how to containerize that particular thing, and so on. So we'll be doing scripted and declarative for Python today, a Java pipeline, this one, and if time permits, we will try out this parameterized pipeline, and there is another thing called upstream and downstream jobs. So we'll try to cover that. Multi-branch, this will be left for the next session, because that is again a vast topic in itself. So next session we'll be doing multi-branch, adding the quality gates, test cases, and alerts. So for today, let's try to cover this Java freestyle pipeline. Later on, in the next session, we will use the same project to deploy this project as a declarative pipeline. So let's not complicate it now. Let's start working on these exercises which we are scheduling for today. So let's start the Jenkins node. And once the pipelines are over, I will also show you another way to launch a Jenkins using a Docker container. I showed you once, but I'll show you another way in which you can customize that Docker container also. But that comes in the end, like that's not a part of this course, but we will do it because that helps you in places where you do not have this virtual box ready. And there's no way you can run Jenkins, so that will be a good starting point to use Jenkins even without having a virtual box. Okay, so let me log in, get the IP, and then we can start our pipeline journey. DevOps, and password is DevOps, so we are in. So here we have the IP 192.168.0.142. All right, so we can minimize it and get through the terminal. Let's just do a Docker PS just to see if anything is running or not. Certain things are running. Let's clear all of them because we don't want older things to interfere in today's project. So you can, because this is the static site which we were trying last time, and this is something else which we were trying. So you can write the IDs directly in a line with spaces, so it will remove all those. So I'm trying to remove those containers, old ones. Now if I do a docker ps, I see everything is fresh and clear. So now we can continue with our Jenkins, but we'll have to again this. We'll have to open our Jenkins node. Oh, sorry, this was admin. All right, so these were the old jobs. Let them be. We will not remove them. And today we'll be first doing the job which I said is the Java project. Okay, so static website, this one is done. So now we'll do this Java project, then we slowly move on to the others. Okay, so for that it says that this is the source code. So this is the repo. So let's open that in another tab. So it is also the same demonstration, but here what happens? The pipeline deploys a Java project. So we'll try to do this. If there are any errors here, again, we will fix that and move on like we did the last time. Okay. Because the projects are same, it would, the code and everything would look similar, but no worries, we can follow the steps and fix the issues, because I have kept it that way in a raw format so that we keep on having the issues and we solve it, and on the way we learn it. Today it might not make much of an impact, but later, I mean couple of months, when you're doing real work and you see some errors and revisit this video, you will find that okay, we had this same problem and I fixed it this way. So that way it will help to learn from the mistakes and move on. Okay, so here is some steps which says what should be done before we run this project. Now this particular demonstration was done for a CentOS system, as I remember, because this was written a long time ago. You can see the time, 3 years ago these commands were written. So it was done for a CentOS Linux. Now we are using Ubuntu. So this prerequisite does not apply now because we are not using CentOS. So yum command and all these steps are not required. Whatever prerequisites will be required will get errors, and we will try and fix those when we come across those errors. Okay, so let's just make a remark here so that you guys don't confuse. These are specific So whatever will be captured in the video today, so that will be for Ubuntu. This is for those who are using CentOS. So this prerequisite part is not included. Rest of the things will be same, because DevOps pipeline in Jenkins is same. You run it on Ubuntu or Windows or any other operating system. So it will be the same. Only that these prerequisites and softwares which are required for Ubuntu, the style of deploying them or installing them, those commands are different. For example, yum install git maven docker. These are for CentOS 7 Linux systems. But if I install these things in Ubuntu, we will do apt get install git Maven and Docker. Docker we already have. I think we'll just install this Maven in Ubuntu, and we'll be good to go and deploy this pipeline. Okay, but we'll do it in steps as we did it earlier. We'll do see the error, come back, fix that error. So that way we also know what prerequisites are there. We can even add a note here like for Ubuntu systems, follow these commands. So that way we will prove our theory as well as fix the problems. So let's see what the files are there in the project. This is the build commands. What does it mean? This is the script which we will add inside the Freestyle pipeline. And these are nothing. These are for this document, like these screenshot images are there in this folder. So nothing important. Here are the code. So this Docker folder contains the code, and here is some test cases. So the code for test cases is here, and the Java website code is here. So many, whatever code has been given by the development team, everything is here. So how are we going to put it as a pipeline and then we try to run it? Okay, so these exercises take time because you go through the troubleshooting part and then fix it. So that's why it takes time. So if required, we'll allocate more sessions for completing the pipelines because it has to be done and understood, not just completed for time's sake. So don't worry about the timing part. Like if required, we'll add more sessions, but let's try to solve the problems. Like this code is given to us. It is a Java code, and they have also given some test cases with us. So how we will integrate the entire thing to a freestyle pipeline. Then when we do the same thing for another pipeline, which is a declarative or scripted, then you will see the difference also, like how uh, differently that pipeline behaves than this one. So let's get started quickly. So new item, let's name it Java Freestyle. You can name it anything actually, but let this be. Okay, even for the test cases, I told you earlier, we don't have to worry for that. The QA team or the testers, they will, if they have written automated test cases, they will give you the code for the test cases, just like here, integration testing. So you just keep that in a folder and put whatever code test team has given here. And the test team told, once they give you, they will also tell you that what are the commands to run these tests. So you have all the arms and ammunitions with you. It's nothing that you are inventing. They tell us that this is my folder, go inside my folder and run these commands, the test cases will run. Similarly, these guys give you the code for the website. They tell you how to make it work. So you just keep the notes in those places. And then finally, when you deploy it, it starts to working. Okay, so here the aim is not to see the correctness of the Java code, whether it works fine or not. It is just to make the pipeline succeed, because if the code has errors or throws errors, we can inform it back to the development team, because our aim is to make it deployable. Okay, so this is the thing. Now these are good practices which we always do: number of days to keep, or number of builds, make it 10, or whatever is applicable in your case. And here nothing at the moment. Git, we have to choose the repository which we are pulling the code from. So let's take the URL from here. All right. These are also not required at this point. Build step is required where we execute the shell script. Now here, what should be the shell script? The build commands are in this file. So open that file. You see a script here. Let's first copy it. We don't know whether it will work or not, but that's the way in which we will go into iterations again and again and fix until it starts working. Let's also copy it to our IDE so that it will be useful to edit it when we start fixing the problem. Make it shell so that the annotations are visible. Here you can see it properly, like which is a comment, which is a real piece of code, and so on. So let's just go through very quickly. First line, it starts the pipeline and echoes it that the pipeline has started. Then it goes into Java web code folder and does the Mvn install. What is this Mvn install? Mvn install is the command which installs the Java code. So this is it builds the Java code actually. So these commands are actually a part of your Java compilation commands. These you don't have to remember. These will be supplied by the development team. As I told you earlier, like whenever they give you the code, they will give you the method to make it work, like how they run it on the laptops. If they don't, you will ask them, like, you have given me the test code, how do you run it on your laptop? So they must have tried it on their laptops now before supplying it to you. So they'll tell you, okay, this code is there, go into that folder and just run this command and then this command. So those two commands you note it down here because we will need it on the script. If you go to the script, you see those two commands are written on the test phase, mvn clean verify and mvn install. Whatever they have supplied, those commands we write it here. Only the docker build command is ours because we only know how to build that docker. So we write the docker build -t, that command. Apart from that, running and building the code into an artifact, that part is supplied by the development team. Okay, initially might seem confusing to you, but don't worry, just follow this script. Whatever is there in this script, if you start using it for a Java project, it will work for you. For I told you earlier, like Java is a language which needs to be compiled. So when you compile a Java uh, project like code, then it gives you a jar file or a var file, .var or .jar. That these are the extensions. Var stands for web archive and jar stands for Java archive. So this is the output. Now this one runs when you run a Java project. Just like when you write a project in C#, it will not run until it is compiled into a executable. So anything in Windows programming, you deploy lots of software in Windows. For example, you downloaded Firefox. You see firefox.exe. So exe is the file which you can double click and get a wizard and deploy it. So this exe wasn't the executable when it was coded. That is, so the code was written in C#, but when they built it or compiled it, it became a executable .exe. Similarly, the code is written in Java. The extension will be .java. If you look at these codes which they have written, so there would be files like this, something .java. Okay, but when it is built, it becomes a var or a jar, web archive or a Java archive. So those archive files are actually ones which will be deployed. Okay, so our job when we are running these commands is actually building that out of the raw code. So it is taking the Java code, converting it into the var. Okay, so When it will be a var file or jar file, all that is defined in their code, so we don't have to worry anything about it. They will tell us like how to make it work. So normally these happens, this is the things that are discussed in the meetings with the developers. Like we say, okay, I have a template for the pipeline script is there, can you help me with this script to run your code? So they will say, okay, here I am not using mvn, I am using gradle or any other. There are lots of these kind of commands also to compile this archives. So those helps are provided by the development team, but in general we just have to know overall like these are the steps, so that you can speak in the meeting or ask them for the help. So this is the thing. So first let's go through what this code is doing, then we'll paste the code in the pipeline and try to run it. Then if we face errors, we'll keep solving them. All right, so you go into that web folder where the code is doing the mvn install. Then coming back, cd dot dot means you go one step back from where you are there in the folder. For example, in Linux, say I make a folder mkdir test, and inside test I make another folder inside test that is called insider 01, and I make another folder insider 02. So what is my structure like? There should be a folder if there is a tree command here. Okay, let's install it. It will give you, this is not actually anything to do with what we are doing, but I just want to demonstrate the cd dot dot thing if you're not aware. Okay, so if we write tree and of the test folder, so inside test there is insider, and inside insider there is insider 2. So this is how it is. Now for example, if I go into test insider 1 and I want to go one step behind, I want to go, so now my present working directory is root test insider 1. This is where I'm present now. So if I want to go into root test one step behind where I am, so in those cases we write a dot dot. So if I do a present working directory, I am inside this and not this. So similarly, that is what is there in this script. It went into one folder and then here it went one step back and went to another folder. So that's why this kind of thing is written, dot dot. And then there it ran the test case, because this was for building the code, this was for running the test case. Once this is done, so your jar and var files are ready. So then you can deploy it into a Docker container. For that, it is copying that file which created in this step, and that file is then created into a Docker container, and that Docker container is then stored, and so on. You remember last time we ran this project, we had an issue with sudo. So we removed sudo because in Ubuntu we are not requiring the sudo. So we know that part already. So let's remove that and try. And I'll remove it from the repository also. Once this is done, we'll put this final one in the repo, because there is no point of having that CentOS one if we are using Ubuntu. Okay, so we just remove the sudo. Other problems, if they come by, we will see and solve it. So let's copy it to our this place, apply, save. So I think we are done with creating the template. Now let's execute and see if it has any errors or works fine. So here you go, the console is trying to check out the code. So it is importing the code from GitHub. It will keep it on the workspace in our Jenkins server, and then it will start working. The first error we see will be Mvn is missing, probably because we don't have Mvn in this server, unless by default it was already there. So that's fine. Then we will try find out a way how Maven command will be installed. If you were following, like here we had a Mvn install. So now it will show Mvn command missing. So let's see. And if it fails to get this project, then we'll see like what we missed, why the project is not getting sourced. All right, so even if there would be a failure, that would come up in this console. So let's give it some time. Meanwhile, we can correct our project and remove the sudo commands which we had added. Or we can do one thing. We can name this file for CentOS. So whoever will use CentOS will continue using the same script, and we will create another file for Ubuntu, which we are using now. So creating a new file. Okay, so this has the Ubuntu command without the sudo, and this is the old one. All right, let's get back here. Did it proceed? It is proceeding. So let's see what was going on. GitHub pulled the code, started to build. As we knew, it got an error. Mvn is not found. We expected that. And so whatever is building now is not building correctly. Okay. Because it is getting some Docker files and all from the repository, that is fine. But if Maven command failed, that means the pipeline will not work correctly, because Maven is used to build the var file. Because Maven command failed, this var file was not built, and it says that no such file or directory. So these two steps have failed here. So we will install Maven in our server and then move on with the other steps. So here the other steps got a success, but our Mvn command wasn't there, so we had a failure overall in that project. Okay, because you can even verify that by going to 8180 and see whether it is there or not. It would not be, because the pipeline does not exist and it won't work. Okay, so first task is to go back to that Ubuntu server and install Maven. Okay, so let's try. And to know whether what would be the correct command, you can just simply search like this: install mvn. It is called Maven, but you write it as mvn. Okay, so you get the repositories and all. It would be just apt install Maven and so on. And if required, some, see, apt install Maven. So why I'm showing you all this is how you will work when you are working. Like, you don't have to remember everything. You will search and you will get the command and do it. For us, I think our server is updated. We don't have to do this apt update. In case it doesn't install, we'll do that, but we can just run this and then Maven will be installed. So go back to your console and run it. It says these libraries for Java will be installed, because as you know, Maven is the tool which is allowing you to build Java projects. So while the installation is going on, let me give you two more information. For building Java projects, you can use three kinds of libraries. Okay. One is Mvn or Maven, which we are doing right now. Another way is called Ant. Ant is a library which can be used, but this is a bit obsolete now. No one, I mean, not many people are using it. I mean, this was the first tool which came in to build Java. So obviously it is phased out a bit. Next came Maven and is heavily used. Nowadays, there is another tool called Gradle. This is also being used. So these projects are active. So in one of the pipelines later on, probably in the next session, I will try to use Gradle so that you know how Gradle is being used. And Maven is also active. Lots of companies use Maven. I mean, this is the most popular for building Java. So when you build a Java project, you will need a tool. It could be Maven, Ant, or Gradle. So here in this pipeline, we are using Maven because the developer told us that the command should be Mvn install. So whatever code and XML files he has kept in his repository, he has defined it with Maven. So in order to install with Maven, we will need Maven to be present in our Jenkins server. So we went ahead and ran this command, apt install Maven, and we got the Maven libraries here. So now if anyone runs mvn commands, he will get some output, okay, because that command is there. See, it tried to build something, but there was nothing in this location. So it says it's an error. But if we run it via Jenkins where the project is present, it will run this time. So let's go back to our Jenkins and try the pipeline again. This time it will be interesting to see what happens when the build goes on. See, now the Maven command is working. So it is trying to download various dependencies and trying to build the var file, and lots of things are going on. So now the code is getting compiled in the Jenkins server. Once the code is compiled, you will see a var file generated, and that var file will be deployed inside the Docker container. So this takes a while. I mean, because it depends, it downloads all these dependencies from the internet. But once this project is compiled again and again, so the times for deployment will get slower, I mean, get faster. Why? Because in Maven, there is a caching system. So once you deploy something, those results are cached. So next time it uses that data from the cache, so it is faster. Similar to like what happens in your browser. You open a website, first time it is slow, next time it becomes faster because lots of cache and cookies are stored in your browser. So it picks up those things from there. But when you clear cache once a while, again it refreshes it. So it's the same principle here. So this is the first time build. So it is downloading everything from the central repository and trying to build that code. So this is how the deployment process works actually. Now, once the deployment is working on Freestyle, let me talk about one disadvantage of Freestyle. See, now deployment is going on. I don't know which phase is going on. Like whether it's a build phase, whether it's a test phase, or whether it is a deployment phase. So the pipeline is running currently, but I don't know where it is, what is going on. The only way to know is looking at the console output. But if I'm someone who is not well acquainted with code and all, so if I just look at this, I don't get any idea what is going on. So this is a big disadvantage of running this pipeline in a freestyle mode. It gets the work done, but not very polished, because you don't know which phase is going on now. Testing is going on. Now, if I see this, then I see whether it is working or not. Like if I see the provisioning of Docker is going on, then I know the provisioning phase has started or something like that. Okay. So that is the thing. All right. So we have this. Project here. Let's see what happened. It got all the dependencies, started building. Then it got the source directory. Okay. It got another error here. So what was that error? It got a compilation error. No compiler is provided in the environment. Perhaps you are running a JRE rather than JDK. Okay, that's fine. And then other steps will obviously make no reason, because this Java web code folder should have a var file created in the end if this works fine. So if there is no var file created, so that means the compilation has failed. Okay. So let's go and fix that problem, which said no compiler is provided, which said no compiler is provided here. So which means we will need JDK installed in our Jenkins server. What is JRE and JDK? I'll talk to you about it. Let's just copy this error and have it here in our notepad. So that will help us to debug and search for the solution. Okay, so whenever you see some errors or something which is pointing at the problem, you copy it out so that it will help you instead of coming back again and again. Another thing which we noticed is these two errors. Like you should, like, slowly when you go through the console logs, you will get better at spotting the errors. Like I am seeing this error and quickly copying that this is the error. This is fine where error is written, but in this you see no such file or directory. Does it seem normal? No, because there should be everything available. So if there is something not available, that means it points to a problem. So it says Java web code, no such file or directory, then cannot stat this. Okay. So this thing is not there, I understand, because this is a artifact which is created only when the above step runs fine. So because of this error, the var was not created. But why wasn't this available? Let's just go through the repo once. It is already present, but it wasn't able to get to that directory. So we'll come to that once we have the JDK thing sorted. So we know these are the three problems bugging us. So once the JDK is sorted, let's see whether these two steps are getting sorted or not. If not, then we'll come back and fix those two steps. Okay. Normally, once the pipeline is, optimized, you won't see these errors. So I am just doing it from a raw code and from a code which was running on a different operating system. That's why we are getting this opportunity to do this and fix this. Otherwise, it will just run out of the box. Because once you are set up with all this, and if I run the same pipeline on Ubuntu once again, on another system, you won't see these errors. So it is a good, gradual movement to fix the problems. Okay, JRE rather than a JDK. Let me explain you what this problem is. You remember we installed Java on the Ubuntu system. So when we install Java, it installs it installs a Java runtime environment. So if I write Java version, sorry, it will be 1 dash. So it gives us that there is a OpenJDK runtime environment installed in this system. Okay. So, but this build is telling that do you have a JRE rather than a JDK? That means you have a runtime environment, you should have a JDK actually. So JDK stands for Java Development Kit. So when compiling, you will need this one in your server. Only having this one will not work. Okay. So let's get back to our repositories, like finding where to get the JDK for Ubuntu. JDK install. Ours is, yeah, one more thing you remember, like whichever operating system you are using, always remember its version. So that, because the commands and the packages and the repositories are different, so you will have to find the correct repository for your particular operating system. So for that, you will have to remember the version which you installed when you installed it. Or you can even run some commands to see etc. Here it's not there. Let's see if, okay, this file, this command actually gives you something which is the code name of the build from which this operating system was derived. Now if you search this in the internet, you will get the version which is equivalent to this particular system. Okay, another command is to do uname -i or just uname a. That gives you information on which system and what is the architecture. So you know this is a 64-bit system and all. So we know that this is a Ubuntu system, and last time we installed Ubuntu 18. So that way we know this is a Ubuntu 18 system. So we'll just go and find how to install a JDK. So it says apt update Java version, and then this installs a JRE, but we are interested in this one. So let's try this command straight away. If it doesn't work, we will go back and install do a update. So it will work. It says, okay, JDK is here, yes or no. So I'm installing it. So see how important it is to have these things in the library or your pipeline will fail. So that is why we are doing it in a reverse way, like facing the error and fixing. But if I would have kept everything installed in my system, then you will not know that why it is not working for you and why it is working for me. So always, like, this also helps because in no production system everything is already there. That is why they are hiring people like us, DevOps people, who can find the problem and solve it. Because already JDK might not be there or might be there. If it is there, you are lucky. You run it and your job ran. So you don't even know that it might not run in another system. So it's always good to know about the dependencies and know how to fix it. And it's simple, like you just see the error, find that software on the internet, what is the repository and what should be the command, and then run that command on your server. So for installing, this is also a prerequisite. So while this is going on, let's also update our documentation so that just in case you forget it, you will be able to see from here. So what am I going to write here? That the whatever we are adding extra for the Ubuntu server, so that we'll write here. Okay, install Maven and Jdk. How to do that? First one was apt install Maven. Second one is this. Where is our command? Okay, this is a big package, taking a lot of time. Let it complete, we'll put that command there. Or we can get it from here. It was something default JDK, I think. Yeah. So that this is recorded. So these are the two things we installed so far. And if anything else is there that comes up, we'll make that modification and write it there. Okay, so these are the two commands which we had to do as a prerequisite before our pipeline was successful. Okay, so JDK is there, all good. Now, just to ensure that this new JDK is being used, we can do something. We will have to restart our Jenkins, and also we can use our this command to see whether the Java compiler is present or not. So JAVAC stands for Java compiler. So this is the command inside the JDK Java Development Kit library that allows you to compile the Java packages using Maven. So let me restart Jenkins. Oh, sorry. So restarting Jenkins will ensure that the latest configurations and Java is updated in the Jenkins. Okay. So Jenkins is up now. It will ask us to log in again. Let's refresh the page because we restarted it. So the session will break. All right, so let's go back and run that pipeline once again. This time it will find the JDK. So that error will go away and there we will be left with two errors. So we'll see what happens then. See, this one is not an error. You might be thinking, what is this going on? If you see a warning, that means it's a warning, not an error. So it says that something might be missing or something, but doesn't mean that it will fail. So we are ignoring that one. Now it will again try to refresh the dependencies based on whatever JDK file we are giving. Then apart from that, there are some other stuff also which happens, that is compatibility between packages. You remember like when we installed this JDK, what was the version we were supplied with? 11.07. So for example, that developer has devised his package to be compatible with Java 10. I'm just giving you an example. So there might be a chance that if you compile it with any Java version you install, it will not work, or it will still fail even if you have the JDK there. So in those cases, we have to get back to the developer and ask like what are the various versions which are compatible with his version of project. So he'll tell you the exact version. Then you will search for how to install Java 10 on Ubuntu 18. So you will get those commands and deploy it. So I just told you this because these kind of situations also happen, not very frequently, but once in a while, these kind of situations also happen. Like there might not be a compatibility with your Jenkins software versions, like whatever versions of softwares are there in the Jenkins server, with what has been written in that code. So if that thing happens, then that's a problem. Okay. So here, let's see what happened during the compilation. Don't see any error there. Okay. Downloading the repo, everything went fine. Test case also went fine. Build also was successful. So we are good till here. Okay. And only thing, we are still left with those two errors. So I think these two errors will be something in our area of expertise. We will see this is something to do with our shell script, like where it is trying to go and look for the var file. So we'll see this. But looking at the build result, we see that the build is successful. So we'll solve that problem, and also we'll see that whether this is running or not at this point. 192, 168. So if something would be running, it will show up in the browser. We can also verify by checking docker ps. Yeah, we see that the pipeline has worked and there is a Java demo project running. Okay. Yeah, it's running. So we are getting a hello world here. So that part is running because we didn't see any error. We saw an error here regarding no file or directory. It is trying to look at this path and not finding it. So we will fix this one also, though it has already deployed. So this one is not important, but we'll still fix it. And it is there in which phase? Integration phase, copying artifacts, that phase. So how can we track it down? We can look this part. So after the build, so build is successful. In the post build phase, it is trying to go into this folder and trying to copy the var file into the docker folder. So there it is facing this problem. So let's see what is going on there. Okay, we can track it from where, we can go it to workspace, because this is happening in Jenkins. So java underscore web underscore code. This folder is there. Inside it, there is a target wildfly. This, it's there already, and it tries to copy it into the Docker folder. Okay. We can do one thing. We can debug this code and solve this problem. Actually, now the problem has been solved. Like, we are getting our website and everything is up, but why leave some error? Let's see what is missing in that code and why it is not able to find this. So we'll fix this. See, our Jenkins server has gone slow. Can you tell me why? Because that Java is running there. It is taking up most of the memory and the CPU of our virtual box. So everything is gone slow. If I kill that particular thing, then it will become fast, but let's. Okay, so to debug that error, what I am trying to do is I will just add a command pwd to know the present working directory, so that I'll know where this code is. So that will help us to understand why it is not able to find this folder. So maybe it is there in the wrong place and trying these commands. So debug and all, these are things of patience. Like, it doesn't happen very quickly if you are doing it properly. You have to spend some time on it and understand it. So again, that step will run. We know everything will work, but we want that error to go away. And if that error doesn't impact our running, then we can also remove that phase altogether from the script. Because if it doesn't do anything which is harming, which is causing the deployment to fail, then why keep that extra step which is throwing an error? Okay, so we got an error and we got what we wanted. So we wanted this. It was there inside Java Freestyle integration testing, and it is trying to go into Java web code. Okay, let's go into the repo. Okay, it is there inside this folder, and it is trying to get into the Java web folder. So I think there is one step that has been missed here. What is that step? That step is cd dot dot. So what I am saying is, if it is inside this and if it does a cd Java web code, it won't see that folder, right? So you have to go one step behind, then only you will be able to see Java web code folder. And then inside Java web code, there is target and there is that var file. So this step was missing in the script. So that is a mistake in the code. So we can now deploy this new code which we found out, and it will work fine. So I just paste everything and run it. While it is running, I will also update this repository. so that next time you do it, you won't see that error. This one was fine, that script was wrong. Okay, so this part is also done. Let's also correct the CentOS. The CentOS thing is also giving an error, but no one realized because it was working in spite of this error. Okay, this one looks different. So let's ignore that. All right, so let's go back to our pipeline. If it has finished, we'll see that error went away or not. Test cases ran, build was successful. So that error has gone. Integration phase, you see, there was this error, nothing now. Because it got the correct file and built the Docker image from it. And this one is also up. So we are good. So that finishes this Java based pipeline. Like go through the video once, apart from what extra things we were talking, I'll compress that. And once you go through that, you will get to know. Now I don't even expect you to understand what I did, because in the middle you might be lost a bit because of those errors and how I am fixing and what exactly I'm doing in the command. But don't worry about that. Once you watch it again, that will make more sense, and so on. Even when I was learning this for the first time, it never made sense to me much, like how to solve it. That's why I'm doing it this way, like solving it, and instead of just running a pipeline and showing you that it was successful. Okay, so this one is done. Next thing we'll do now is this Java part is done. HTML was done last time. Another thing is, this one is a big task, so let's do this now. Then these two are like parameterized jobs and upstream downstream. These will take 5 minutes or so for each of these tasks. So let's do the scripted pipeline. So that will give you a very good understanding of what actually a pipeline looks like, because this one is fine, but this is for amateurs, like those who are just beginning with DevOps. If they are asked to create a pipeline, they will do it this way. Okay, write a shell script, put this form, and mention the source code and write the script there and apply. But this is very amateurish. But if you are slowly going into an expert level, like you want to know how exactly it is done in production servers, then it is done in this way, which we are going to do now. Okay, that will be called the scripted way of writing pipelines. Now scripted pipelines have a variation. One of them is called uh, declarative. Okay, so when we do that, then I'll tell you the advantages, why we are doing that, and all those steps. Okay, so for that, it is there in this the notes are there in the GitHub, and here you see the repository where the scripted pipeline example is present. So here you have this repository, and when you have time later on, and not now because that will confuse you a lot, when you have done all these and when you have done the next session, then sit down, like once you are comfortable with these pipelines, running them, then once you sit down and read this part. Here I have written like what exactly a scripted pipeline is, what should be its structure, and how is it different from declarative pipeline and so on. Now reading this will be completely, it won't yield any result because you won't understand anything, and nor would you be able to differentiate between these two. So leave it for a couple of days now, from here till the end of the task. So now we will only do the task and see what is going on. And then we will understand, like, okay, so this was it. And then you read more about it here. Okay. Because this pipeline thing is very important. When you talk about Jenkins, people will ask you questions like what kind of pipelines you have done, what is the difference, and so on. But if you are in a company where it doesn't matter what you are doing in DevOps, you can even use the Freestyle pipeline, no problem. Because others, developers or management people, they don't care whether you are using a Freestyle or a declarative. But this declarative makes our tasks easier. Like as a DevOps, you make yourself very comfortable, so that because in Freestyle, whenever a new job comes in, you have to create a new pipeline. But here you do a code once and then it can be reused for other pipelines also. I'll tell you how that happens. Let's first see it, then we will compare these two. Let's first try to deploy it in 15 minutes at least. If it works out, then we will compare how it was different from a Freestyle. So you will see the differences. Okay. So this is the repository for scripted and declarative. Like we are using the same code, but I have written two different scripts for two different pipelines. Okay. And you can use these scripts as your templates in future. Whenever you are asked to deploy a declarative, just come here and copy this script, make your changes inside and do that. It will work. I'll tell you what is there, what are each steps, what does they mean, everything we'll discuss. Okay. So scripted and declarative pipelines are creating pipelines where you write your scripts instead of using that form which Freestyle provides. So in Freestyle, you get a form where you put the repository, you put the various stages and all by writing a shell script or shell command. But here you write your own commands, scripts in a language called Groovy. If you get some time, you can Google that one also. Groovy is a programming language similar to Java. Okay. So we use that language to write pipelines. So you can just go through it. It doesn't mean you have to learn Groovy, because other than writing this few lines of the pipeline, you won't need it much. So this one is sufficient. Whatever I have written in these two files is sufficient Groovy knowledge for you to continue. And you will just have to add some stages in the pipeline. That's it. You don't have to make lots of conditionals or anything in this. So that's why it is not needed that much, but at least understanding what is written, that is required. Okay. So that's why if you write shell scripts, if you learn a bit of Linux, it helps. I have always told you that, like if you learn Linux and a bit of shell script, then it helps to do anything else, like Groovy, Python, everything, all the syntax, apart from the syntax, everything else is similar. Like any programming language, you will have some conditions, some variables, some functions, and so on. So the basic fundamentals are same. So whenever you get time later on, get more hands-on on Linux and shell script also, so that these things become very easy for you. But that doesn't stop you from doing this, because they are also very well established. Like you just take this and apply it on a Jenkins server, it will work. So doesn't mean that you have to write it from scratch, because resources are there and people are there to help you out. But down the line, if in 1 year you can master those two things also, like Linux shell scripts and a bit of Python, as you grow on, you keep on adding more to your wish list, so that in 4 5 years you become a strong professional. So That is the thing. All right. So this is the code, and let me tell you the structure here. This is a Python project. So you can see these .py files, test.py, app.py. This is a very simple project here. So it is something which just says, hello, we have Python Flask in a Docker container. Okay. So this is only, it will print this in a web page. Sorry. All right. So this is the only work of this project. And there is another file called test.py which runs a test case. Okay. This was given by the test team, and that other file was given by the development team. So you deploy this, run this test case, and create a container, Docker container. For that, Docker file is also there. So once the Docker container is created, we deploy it. So the entire steps should be done automatically using the pipeline. And for that pipeline to run, we have some scripts written here in the Jenkins file. So everything is there in this project. So I'll show you how to put things together and run it. Okay. But as with every pipeline, like for Java, we needed some prerequisites. So similarly for Python also, we will need some prerequisites. All right. So what are those prerequisites? It's here already. This is for Ubuntu only, because we can see apt command means you know that this is something to do with Ubuntu. So it says this is a one-time task to install these things. Once it is done, then you can try running this. So we'll do this and try running this. All right, then I'll show you how the pipeline will be created and all. So first, let's do the prerequisites on the Jenkins server. So this will be just a simple run. So this is doing an update because of updating the Python libraries. So no harm, let's do it. This is for installing a library of Python that is called pip. Okay, pip is a command which allows Python to install other libraries which it needs. So we will need to install this pip. All right, so this is done. Next is to install that pip library. This is a one-time task. Next time, whenever we try a Python project, we will not need to do this. So you get your libraries in place. And if some error comes by, then we install it. So that is how it works. Like there is no single formula of success. So whenever there is an error, you see what the error is and install that package. Okay, once pip is installed, the next thing we will install is pip install XML Runner. This library is used for the test case. Otherwise, the test case will fail. How do I know it? Because I have done it earlier. And whenever did not install this, the software worked fine, but the test case failed with an error that XML Runner is missing. So that way I knew that, okay, so this is the dependency for a test case. All right, so let this installation complete. It is complete now. So we will install this XML Runner. That is also installed. So now we are ready to build our pipeline. So it says that how to build the pipeline stages, you have to use this code. This same code is written here also. So now we are doing this scripted pipeline. So we will use this. Okay. This is our, this is the code which we will be using. So how do we go about writing a scripted pipeline? First is new item, that's same as what we did earlier. So it gives this. So I write scripted pipeline, which we are doing on Python. So you can write any name or the name of the project. If it is a shopping cart or whatever is the name of the project, that you will write. So project name is written. Here I am not choosing freestyle anymore, because freestyle, we don't want freestyle, we want a scripted. So for that you just choose this one, pipeline. Okay, and okay. All right, so here we are with the scripted pipeline. This is how we are configuring it. First of all, we selected the option that we will use the pipeline script from the SCM, which means we will use it from the repository. So let's get back to our repository. For this particular project, it will be scripted and declarative pipeline repo. So here we have the Jenkins file or the script for the current pipeline. So I can do it either way, copy this one and paste it here, but for that option I'll choose the pipeline script and paste it here. But that is not a neat way, because then it defeats the purpose of scripted pipelines. For example, if someone deletes this job, then the script goes away along with it. So in order to prevent that, we use this option, so that even if someone deletes the job, you have everything there in your repository. So you just have to point it there and recreate the job. So when we select this option, it asks us what is the version control system we are using, and we are using Git, as our code is hosted on GitHub, and that's it. And then we put the repository URL. We get the repo URL from here, like we have done earlier. We get it from here, so just copy it and paste it over here. Done. Credentials, I keep it at none, because this is a public repository. You don't need to have credentials. If it was a private repository, you have to add credentials for that repository, username, password, or keys. Branch is master, because we are writing to master by default. And here is the script path. Here you have to name the name of the script. So in our case, it's Jenkins file scripted. So that's what has been filled up in this form. Rest of the things remain default. So apply this and save it. These were the previous runs which had failed, because there were certain for the first run it did not recognize the path, and the second run there was we had to put the repo URL which was missing. So now let's see what happens with the console logs. We'll be able to follow whether something is failing or everything is in place. So I triggered this job, so it goes down to job run number 3. Now it is being pulled, so code is here. Now it started building the Docker image. This is a Python Flask project, so it takes the Python app and tries to containerize it. Then it will run that particular app and run one test case against it. So meanwhile this is building, we can have a look at what the app file and the test file is. So you can see .py extension means this is a Python project. So here it's a simple project that prints, hey, we have a Python Flask in a Docker container. So this is the text that is printed. Now for a test case to judge whether a task works correctly or not, so it tests certain returns of that particular script. So now this script, if it works fine, will return this text. So the test case tries to trap that and see whether that particular return matches with what is written in the test case file. So in the test case it says assert equal this particular text. So if this is equal to what is printed out by the code, then the test case pass and we get the test reports as successful. So that is how a test case works. We don't have to go deep into test cases, because that's not our job as a DevOps deployer. So what we are doing is just to enable the pipeline, but we need to have a high level understanding of what the files are and what they do. So going back here, we see that already it has moved a bit further. It has created a Docker image, downloaded all the dependencies for it, and in the end it ended up as a failure. So let's look at why this happened and what's going wrong. So it says module Flask is not present. So that means one more dependency is there that is not present, and that is causing the error to happen. Alright, so in order to install a Flask module, you have to run a pip command. So that would be another in our list of dependencies. So let's fix this error and see how it goes. So this is our Jenkins server. So we'll do a pip install just like we did some time ago. Let me look if I have that command here. It's not there. So let me do pip 3 because this is the Python 3 version. Install Flask. That's it. So we rerun this pipeline once again to see whether all the dependencies are met, and this time it works fine or not. So that gives us another prerequisite to add to our list of prerequisites. Let's do it right away. Here in the readme file. So we have to do this as well as this pip install Flask. These were the 4 prerequisites. If anyone starts from scratch, would do all the 4, won't see the error. Since we are doing it in a mode that we find errors, solve it and move on to the next step. This is a way in which we are learning, solving errors and moving ahead instead of just having everything in place and going out and finding everything to be good. Because in real world it happens this way, like you see errors, scramble around, fix them, and then go back to working. So alright, let's follow the pipeline again. This time we see a blue dot, that means it has passed, but let's go through. So here everything was built and the test cases ran successfully, and so in the end it was a success. So in a scripted pipeline, you see the advantages. One advantage is while the script is running, you see various stages clearly defined. Second thing, you see which stage exactly failed, and not just that the entire job failed or passed. So this is a big way to detect the actual errors. And you also see the reason. If you can click here, it directly picks up those logs and shows you what was the error in that case. For example, here it was returning a non-zero code, there was something missing, and so on. Here we see it was that Flask error which was fixed by installing the pip install Flask command. So this is how the pipelines work. And if we add another phase called the deploy phase, then that would happen too. It will deploy it to some server and so on. So this is how a scripted pipeline looks like, and the advantage is it's simple after a point because you just have to configure your repository with a file where you define the script. For example, in our case it was this file. Now let's go a bit deep into this file. So this file is a simple example of a scripted pipeline. So for what do we define here? First, in the node master, it defines where will this particular script run. In Jenkins, the main node is called the master node, and if you have additional nodes with Jenkins, those are slave nodes where you can define whether, for example, you have a slave 1 and a slave 2. You can define node slave 1, which means the job will run on the slave 1 only. So you can bind your job to a particular node. Sometimes you're required to do that. For example, you have a certain environment set and all the software dependencies installed on that particular node, and you would want it to run on that node. And sometimes people need to do that for load distribution. But since we are using a single node Jenkins, we mention the node as master. So that is the first nested uh, bracket that begins. After that, you can see three repeating stages, like this is one block, this is another block, and this is another. So these three blocks or stages define each stage of the pipeline. So you can write all the commands you want to run in that particular stage. For example, in the source stage, I want to just get the source of this repository, so that I am just cloning this repository with this particular directive. Then this particular directive is used to build whatever I have code I have cloned. I am using it to build a Flask app Docker container. And in the third stage, I am running the test case, the script that comprises the test case. I'm running it. So this is what a scripted pipeline is, and pretty simple. The script this template can be reused, and you will just have to modify whatever other Docker container you're building, or whatever repo you're using. You have to replace it with that particular name, all right, of the repository. And apart from that, let's then go back to Jenkins. We'll try another thing, then move on to the declarative pipeline. So in the scripted pipeline, you saw this is a good visualization of what's going on and what's the logs are. There's still better visualization for a pipeline. In order to do that, there is a plugin in Jenkins called OpenBlueOcean. Okay, so let's install that plugin and run this job again to see how magical scripted pipelines are and why people use them. So go to Manage Jenkins, and then we go to Manage Plugins. To install the Blue Ocean plugin, we just have to enable the plugin and restart the services. That brings Blue Ocean plugin into the Jenkins. That gives a very good view of your pipeline. It also allows you to see in real time what stages are going on, which ones are passing, which ones are failing, and so on. So it really does a good job with visualizing your pipelines, and that's why it's pretty popular in within the DevOps circles. So manage plugins. Let's go to the list of available plugins, and you can search for Blue Ocean. So here we are. We have the Blue Ocean plugin. Check it. Install without restart. So this will take a while because there are lots of libraries to be downloaded for this plugin to get installed. Alright, so while it is getting installed, we can discuss a bit more on the other kind of pipeline, that is the declarative pipeline, and we can also discuss something about what is the difference and what are the advantages of each of them and which one is more suitable to be used. So we have done the scripted pipeline. It was just a simple pipeline with various stages, and you can run command on each stage, and you can visualize each stage there in the Jenkins dashboard. But there are certain restrictions as to when you have to do certain uh, conditionals or loops, or certain restrictions. For example, you need approval before moving on to the next stage. For example, if test is passed and the supervisor or the team lead approves, only then it is pushed to the production. So if you need something like that, then in these cases it's better. I mean, I'm not saying it cannot be done in a scripted pipeline, but it's better do it on a declarative pipeline because that makes it more flexible. So let's see how the Jenkins file for a declarative pipeline looks like. So this is a declarative pipeline Jenkins file. So how do you distinguish whenever you see a pipeline here, like it begins with the syntax pipeline, you understand that this is probably a declarative pipeline, and here it starts with a node or a stage. So that's basically different in the syntax. So in the declarative pipeline, you also define which agent should take care of your particular pipeline job. So I have written any because we don't care which agent takes in, but otherwise you can also define, say you have a Docker slave running for Jenkins, you have a Jenkins in a particular node and you want that particular node to attend to this job, then you can define it, but normally not needed. Just keep it as any, like I have done here. And then comes the stages, similar to what it is in a scripted pipeline, and within stages you have various stage build, stage test, stage approved deployment, and so on. So this is the stage I was talking about. For example, if you need an approval step after the test case goes on, so you are using an input, you require a user input where you are asking whether to proceed for deployment, yes or no. If the user says yes, only then this step will happen. Okay, so the final step is only for getting the confirmation and deploying the Docker. So if the deploy stage is to be done, or it will be done only when there is an affirmative in this step. So if this guy says no, then these won't be executed. So this approved deployment stage makes it very stable, so that a particular thing doesn't go into production until a human approves it. So which is a safe way to play. Next, another important function which we have here is we can post certain things. For example, instead of writing everything as a shell script, here for example, if the test case passes, it posts it as a JUnit test report, and that report can be viewed. All right, so this is also a good way to do a pipeline. So most pipelines which are evolved and advanced are normally follow the declarative way to do the deployments. It might not be making much sense to you right now, as I say always, but let's do this declarative pipeline, then you will get a very good idea of what I was talking about, and you'll see it in action. So this will be our pipeline script which we will be using. So let's see on the other side whether the OpenBlueOcean is installed or not. It is. So it's a good practice to restart Jenkins after this is installed, so I'll do that. We don't mind a few minutes of outage in Jenkins. So this will actually restart Jenkins and refresh the page, and we get the login screen once again. And once we log in, we'll be back using Jenkins, and we'll create a new job and see the OpenBlueOcean plugin in action as well. So let's follow what's going on here. Service Jenkins status, it says it's active, so maybe that process is still going on. Alright, so the restart is done here. So I log in back to the Jenkins. Alright, still pending. Alright, so until this happens, we'll have to wait, or we can manually do a hard restart of Jenkins. Well, it's still loading. That means it had initiated a restart and it's trying to load the Jenkins once again. So normally it takes a couple of minutes. We have to be patient. Alright, so we have our Jenkins back. Let's go back and see whether we see the dashboard or not. Here we are, we have the dashboard here, and you see a new link here on the left hand side, Open Blue Ocean. So that means the Blue Ocean plugin is installed. So we'll get to that later on. Let's create a pipeline first for the declarative mode, and then we move on and see what's there with the Open Blue Ocean. So declarative pipeline, or it's a Python, so we can write a Python script. So this is just the project name, whatever is the project name, it can be at that. So I select pipeline and OK. So as usual, put a description, declarative Alright, this one is optional, but I always make it a practice to do it, so did that. Pipeline script, no, I'm using it from SCM, and my pipeline script is called Jenkins file declarative. So I put it here, apply. This build will fail because we haven't yet mentioned the name of the repository, the URL, because that wasn't available at that point. Now it will show up the repository URL form. So we copy our repository URL. How do we do that? We do it from here, paste it. Again, this is a public repository, no need of credentials, master branch, that's all right. Save it. Okay, so now we can run this job and see what happens. If the job runs fine, then next time we'll see the job running via the Open Blue Ocean plugin. That gives a better view, as I was saying. Alright, so we have reached a stage where the container is built and it's asking for us to proceed or to abort. Remember, there was a conditional in our pipeline here which said that you will ask this question, and if the user approves the deployment, then only that function allows you to move forward. So it's waiting at that question. You can see this here also. Do you want to proceed for deployment? I say proceed. Then it proceeds with the deployment. All right. So, and if it has proceeded successfully, you would see that page in the port 5000 of the IP address of this Jenkins server. So let's look at 5000. Hey, we have a Python Flask in a Docker container, so it's working fine for us. So going back, let's see how does this pan out when we look at this pipeline from the Open Blue Ocean. Here you can see the Open Blue Ocean plugin. Whenever you build a job and click on the Open Blue Ocean plugin, you can see that particular pipeline in action. See, this job is going on, and if I click here, I can see it has done these 2 stages and reached the approved deployment stage and asking to proceed or to abort. If I proceed, it runs the command and then finally deploys it. So here it gives a very good view of the entire pipeline. You can see from end to end what's going on, what are the different phases, and drill down on the phases. Like this phase had these commands and what was the outcome of each command in the server in the background. So if there is any failure, this plugin allows you to test very easily. So here the test case was run, here the deployment approval was asked, and finally the deployment was done. So a very good way to learn like what is going on in the pipeline, and you can directly run it from here as well. For example, this declarative job is working. I click on open and I see it in action. One step passed, second step passed, third step is waiting. For example, if I say abort this time, it changes the color. That means it was aborted, and that's how the particular build ended. Like it built successfully, tested, but I did not approve, so it aborted. So that is how these are the different scenarios which you can see better using the Jenkins OpenBlue plugin. So that's the reason, like if you want to see the entire journey, you can directly click here and see whether the pipeline passed or failed, or it was cut short at a particular stage, what were the commands in each phase, and so on. So that is all about the declarative pipeline and its deployment. We had some more things in our agenda today. One of them is parameterized job, and another is about upstream, downstream, and scheduled jobs. So let's do upstream, downstream, and scheduled jobs first, and then we moved on to parameterized. So let me tell you first what the upstream, downstream, and scheduled jobs are. For that, let me go back to the normal Jenkins dashboard. So we are back. You can go to OpenBlueOcean anytime clicking on this link on the left hand side. So that takes you to OpenBlueOcean visualizations. It is only for visualizing the pipeline, seeing the errors and all. More sophisticated way to do it rather than just looking at the console logs, but doesn't make any enhancement on the functionalities. It's the same when you do it from here or there, doesn't matter. It only depends on how elegant it looks, and it makes it convenient for everyone to take screenshots or to visualize the error or track where the problem is coming from easily. Okay, so coming back to our task which we are focusing on right now, one of them is upstream and downstream jobs. See, mostly in DevOps scenarios, you will see a lot of jobs which are interrelated. Okay, so there might be scenarios like, if example website this task passes, only then this task will run, or if the scripted Python passes, only then run the declarative. For example, you get these kind of scenarios. So how to do, I mean, how to work out in those cases. So that is the reason we are learning this. For example, there are two jobs, A and B. If A is successful, only then it triggers B. So these kind of scenarios are called upstream and downstream jobs. So if something runs after me, only if I am successful, then the other job is called my downstream job, and for the other job I am the upstream job. So if I run successfully, only then the other guy will run successfully. So for example, let's try something. Let's try this job first, if it works fine or not, just to ensure everything is in place. We just need some dummy jobs just to see whether one job runs means the other job runs too. So if that works for us, we can latch these two jobs to make upstream and downstream jobs so that they'll work fine for us to demonstrate. Alright, so this job is working fine. So let this job be the upstream job. For upstream and downstream job, you have some trigger options. You can see build trigger. So here is an option like build after other projects are built. So if you select this and mention any other project name, then it will become a downstream job of that plugin. But Java Freestyle, we are intending for this job to become an upstream job. So let's select another job which is working. So be it shopping cart. Let's see this job works or not. Okay, this is working. So here we can configure a build trigger called build periodically, build after other projects are built. So we want to say that if Java project works, only then this project should run. And to do that, we mention the project name here, which we want to run before this project, and apply it. Okay, so you can see this project is at run number 2 and Java project is at run number 6. Let's go to OpenBlueOcean for a better visualization. So this is at a run number 6. So I run this project. Let's see what happens. It has started working. So various phases are going on. Alright, so this one is complete. So now if we go back to the Jenkins dashboard and go back to the other project called shopping cart, we can see the third run has completed, but we did not trigger it. How did it run? It ran by the upstream pipeline Java Freestyle build number 7. So that means this particular job was triggered by another job without having to run this job. So whenever you run that other job, the upstream job, then this pipeline will be triggered. So why I'm sharing this with you, you might face certain situations where they will ask you like there are 2 or 3 jobs, only run the third job when 1 or 2 are complete. These kind of requirements might come in. So there, then you understand that they are talking about upstream and downstream pipelines. So the third job has to only be triggered only when 1 and 2 are passed. So you link job number 2 with job number 1. So if 1 passes, number 2 starts up, and when 2 passes, automatically 3 starts up. So that way all these 3 jobs would be linked and they would run in a sequence. So that is about upstream and downstream jobs. Next thing which we wanted to do is the schedule job. So this is the third kind of a job based on timings or depend on triggers. Okay, so let's go back to the Jenkins and try out a schedule job on the Java Freestyle itself. Schedule job is also set up from the trigger option. Here in the trigger you can see one option called build periodically, this one. Okay, so if you check this, you will have to write a schedule. All right, so the schedule works this way. Say I want to run it at 2 a.m. in the morning. So we write 0002 star star star. This is how this schedule is done here. So it says it will run next time on May 16 at 2 a.m. in the morning. So this is how the jobs are defined. Now you might be thinking, what are this? What is this syntax? You can read more about it here. Linux Cron syntax. All right. There should be some image that explains it well. This one. See, there are 5 fields which we had set up. So the first field was minute. So you remember, for 2 a.m. I put it as 0. And second is the hour. So I put it as 2. So 2.0 means 2 a.m. Third is day of the month. I want it every day, so I don't do anything. So it is a star. Star means a wildcard, which stands for every day. So this is every month, every day of the week. Okay, so this is every date and this is every day. So only these 2 values are populated because we need a certain time. So 0 minutes and 2 hours. So that means 2 a.m. in the morning. Rest of the things remain unchanged. So that is the reason we put it like this: 0, 2 and star star star. So you can search about that cron job syntax to know more about what cron jobs are. By cron we mean scheduled jobs. So if you want at 12 a.m. you can just make it 12. If you want at 12:15 you can make it like this. So that is how you can schedule a job. And if I apply this every day at 12:15, this job will run, Java Freestyle. Now combined with the other job, the downstream job, so whenever this job runs at 12:15, the other job will trigger too, because it is a downstream job configured. So that is how upstream, downstream and scheduled jobs are created. So very easy and very short at that. Next is the parameterized job. Now what is a parameterized job? It is a very interesting job which takes in input from the user and based on that does the action. Okay, so the next step which we are going to do is the parameterized Jenkins job. So what is a parameterized job? It is a job which takes in input parameters from the user and uses those variables to run that job. So for this demonstration, what we are going to do is we will ask the user uh, which color you want to choose, red or blue. Based on the choice, we will provide that particular color of website to him. This is just an demonstration, so we are just showing. For example, we have index.blue, in which the text is printed in blue color, and we have a index.red file which the text is printed in red color. So what we are doing here is, whichever input he provides, we will copy that file and name it index.html, so that way that will appear as the main page in the website in that particular color. So the point would be demonstrated that whatever the choice was made, that choice was followed by the pipeline. So for that we have to define this script which makes that change based on the choice, and we have to define those choice parameters as a drop down, and then we run the old script for CI/CD to make it into a Docker container and run it. So with this objective, let's start doing it. So a new item, you can just write the name as parameterized job, and we choose a freestyle project for this. Okay, and this is a param job. So here we select project is parameterized, add parameters. There are lots of choices. So here we use a choice parameters because we will ask the user to choose either red or blue. So the parameter is choice, the name of the parameter, and the choices are red or blue. So based on the choice, the deployment will be made. So choose the color you want your index page to be. So this is the question we will ask the user who is deploying. Source code management, here we have to provide the repo URL, copy it, paste it here. This is a public repository again, so we don't have to add any credentials for this demo. And then comes the important step, the build step, where we execute shell. So the first block here will be this. This will make the choice, use the choice parameter and make the decision whether blue or red. This is a small if conditional. Then again a shell if this condition, once the decision is made here, we just execute the CI/CD pipeline script which we created earlier for the static website. So this is also a static website, so the same applies. So we run that script to create a Docker image out of the code here, and that will be deployed on a particular port which will be displayed in the console log. So we are done with this. Now we build with parameter options come in instead of build, because we have used a parameterized option. So now you can see a drop down here. So the point of this is not just making a website red or blue, that is just an example, but this parameterized option will allow you to do a lot of things. Like sometimes there are scenarios where you are asked to choose a particular environment to deploy. Like you will be given a choice, dev, staging, or production. So based on that you can write a script which environment to deploy and so on. So that's when the choice parameter comes handy. This demonstration just shows you how a choice parameter is used. So say I select red and build it. Let's see what's going on in the logs. It starts taking the decision here and it's done, and it's building the job. The deployment is done. It's working on 8888. I already left it open. Let's refresh and we see a red page. For example, if we go back and use the blue and build our job, up, so we refresh and we see the blue page. So that means the parameters are being picked up correctly and working. So parameterized job is used only when you need certain parameters to be inputted by the user. For example here. So you can add other choices also if you need some choices from the user and incorporate it on your script. These are rarely used options, but it is good to know because we are covering the pipeline end to end. So this will also come in handy someday. So that concludes our session today. In the next session we'll go a bit deeper into declarative pipelines, and we'll try to build a Node.js application using a CI/CD pipeline, and we'll also try to deploy a test case there on that application. SonarQube to detect the code quality of a website, and we will also look into how Slack alerts are sent from jobs. Like if a job passes or fails, a particular alert would be sent into a Slack channel. So this will be our next viewer. So it was a good hands-on today, and let's wrap it up. Keep working hard on your learning, and ask me questions if you have any. Have a good day.